Well, hello. This is Jimmy the Hammer, and what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be talking to somebody that I met at the RKC along with Tina, one of the students. His name is Dan Herman, and I want to have him share his story with us, how he got into kettlebells, what his backstory is, our story, and how we have lost weight and struggles and things like that are vaguely similar. So I think we're going to enjoy talking to Dan today. There you are, Dan. Shazam. The
How you doing, Jimmy?
amazing wonderfulness of modern technology.
Oh, it's great. It's the best.
Yes, it is. So we met in January at the RKC in
That's right.
Jersey City, where you were one of the students, and you were, as Dan said, you have a great name.
It's a fantastic name, and I think his is great also.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah,
because it makes it easy for me to remember your name, which is very handy,
that's
and
good.
not
That's all right.
and not at all embarrassing. No, me forgetting anybody's name on a podcast like this, not at all embarrassing.
Never happened.
Would never happen because I know you all so well and I don't forget anything. Not. So anyway, how long have you been there? This is going to be a very wide ranging and very weird discussion because my brain, I have ADHD, which means we're going to be bouncing around all over the place, but this is mainly going to be you talking, me adding. So Dan, you decided to go to the RKC in January. Why did you do that?
So I've been working in the fitness industry really, I'd say, since about 2008. I was still wearing a suit for a living. I was still working in the legal profession. Fast forward, I was living in a different state at the time. 12 years ago, I moved to New Jersey. Was still wearing a suit for a living, still working that corporate 9 to 5 life, or more like 8 to 6 or 8 to 8 life, and was downsized from my last corporate job. And I'm like, you know what, now? And so I hopped online and I ordered my NASM self-study materials. This would have been 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Ordered my self-study materials. Took me about 9 months, maybe a little bit more. I'm a little bit older, so studying things again, and not, it was hard. Took the exam and passed. I started volunteering for a local gym. I live in the middle of central New Jersey. Started volunteering for a local gym here, volunteered for a while, and
The
then they
nice
started.
part of New Jersey.
Yes, dramatic pause.
Yeah, dramatic pause. It's like I'm only going to slight diversion is coming from New England and possibly anybody that lives on the East Coast that only experiences New Jersey because they drive through Newark.
It's interesting that you say that because
It's
New Jersey to me was foreign, and I was born and raised in the Philadelphia area. I'm
okay.
pointing to it as if that's exactly where it is, but it's
Uh-huh.
somewhere out there. So once I started working in the business at this local gym, I knew like that this was the direction. And bear in mind, when I first started my personal journey going back to 2004, I mean, I was 385 pounds, maybe a little bit more than that. And the first thing I did in order to, this is the way. I bought a pair of running shoes and I started running because that just seems to make the most sense. So that's what I did for the longest time. I didn't pick up a weight with any kind of serious vigor until really about 7 or 8 years ago, more passionately within the last 4 or 5 years. But I started working as a trainer. The pandemic hit, gym shut down. I took a flyer on myself and incorporated as my own business of one employee, me. And I've been working as a sole practitioner. No, I've been in business for myself ever since.
Sole proprietor.
So thank you. I've been in business ever since. When the pandemic hit, I didn't have a single weight in the house. Nothing. And dumbbells were impossible to find. And so the only thing I could get my hands on were, I'll leave the brand out of it, but these obnoxiously shaped adjustable kettlebells that are really nothing better than doorstops. I have since graduated and then started adding more and more and more. So off to my left here and down to the floor, my little army of bells. And I literally just started digesting as much tutorial content as I could to try to figure out what the hell I was doing. And then reps and reps and reps and reps. Wait, that didn't feel right. Or you're cleaning. Ow, that hurt. Don't do that. Let's do that better. And I fell in love with kettlebell. The simplicity of it. By accident, I discovered, Dan John's work, and he got me on the idea of an easy strength type of model for strength work. And yeah, now I'm the one getting lost on the tangent. So anyway, I've been in business for myself for the last like 5 or 6 years.
Again, it's okay for you
Yeah.
to you can go on tangents because this is your story. So
Squirrel.
I want
Squirrel.
to why don't we touch on, because not everybody in the channel is going to understand what easy strength is. So if you
Sure.
Want to just
Sure.
explain easy strength? I mean, I know what it is. I've had Dan on the channel, but
Yep.
that doesn't even everybody realizes what
Easy strength is probably, from a prescriptive standpoint, one of the most challenging things to acknowledge and accept. It's really
Wow, that's yes.
okay. It's really not hard. It's simple, but it's not easy. But it
Mhm.
is easy. It's effectively the rule of 10 every time you show up to your workout. So my workouts, for instance, would be 3 sets of 3 or 2 sets of 5 on an overhead press, a pull of some kind, whether it's a pull down in the gym, some sort of row. I'm working on my pull-up game. Hinges, whether it's could be ballistic swings if you're doing those. I've been working with the trap bar deadlift lately. I've really been enjoying that. Again, 2 sets of 5 or 3 sets of 3, never over 10, never over 10. And the idea of that being, Pavel Tsatsouline had shared that with Dan some years ago. And he had said, and I'm going to paraphrase, and I hope I don't get it too wrong.
Okay.
Show up for 40 straight workouts.
This is key. 10 reps per set.
10 total reps in the workout. 10 total reps. So 2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, 2, 3, 5, or 6 singles, which is one of my favorites when you're starting with a new weight. 6 singles is a lot of fun.
Per exercise.
Per exercise, that is
Yeah.
correct. So if I'm doing, say, single arm overhead press, or even doubles for that matter, 3 sets of 3 or 2 sets of 5 is generally where I gravitate. The theory behind easy strength in general, and it's actually a model that I use with a lot of clients, is that when you wake up the next day, you're not beat up with lactic acid. So you can show up and turn out for whatever it is you need to do, whether it's go to work, perform on the field, show up and train again, whatever it is you want to do. I think far too often we just add more reps for the sake of adding more. You can get stronger somewhat, but after a while, it just turns out to be more. Whereas if you're really focused on the load that you're lifting and it's appropriate for you and your form's good, 2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, 5 sets of 2, really, if strength is your goal, by the way, because everyone's goals are going to be a little bit different. If strength is your goal, I challenge anyone to find a more efficient way. And the beautiful part is you're done in less than a half an hour, and then you can go for a walk, you can go for a bike ride, go for a run. It's been a fantastic approach for me. And I've played with complexes. I've done a bunch of other things. For me, I've seen the most improvement in terms of just sheer strength with easy strength.
Now let's go into why, because I agree. Why it's simple, but it's not easy. Why is it not easy?
That's it? Is the response I generally get? And my answer is yes. Because again, if you are loading appropriately, if you are truly doing your best, most appropriately loaded, say, single overhead press, dumbbell, kettlebell, I don't care what it is, doesn't matter. For 3 sets of 3, that will get your heart rate up. You will test yourself. Hinges too, although Dan talks about doing swings in a slightly different way, between 50 and 75, I think he says.
75.
Yeah.
Sets of 15. You do 6 sets of, I think it's 6 sets of 15 or something like that.
Yeah, I've struggled with my ballistics over the years, which you and I actually talked about in Jersey City during the RKC, because when I actually got started on this personal journey, I was diagnosed with an arachnoid cyst on my spine, lumbar spine, a little degenerative thing that kind of eats away at the bony structure. So anything that requires the ballistics took me a long time to sort of figure out a little bit. Single arm stuff does not work for me. The stabilization just isn't there in the structures. 2 hand swings I can do. Goblet squats are fine. Deadlifts are fine.
Can you do hand-to-hand swings?
I've tried them in the past. I have to go lighter on them. And I'll tell you what, I showed up in Jersey City. I'm like, you know what? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to try the snatch test. I'm so glad I did. And I may at some point down the road.
Oh, so you didn't do the snatch test?
I did not. And I knew
Okay.
going in I was not going to.
Okay.
I was not prepared. I was traveling a bunch prior. My goals for me personally, and this is not to poo-poo on the snatch test. I think it's beautiful. And at some point, I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to pass the damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
But my goals right now are about getting in the best possible shape of my life, being as strong as I can possibly be. This is the most pain-free structurally, especially my low back, as I have been in years. And that's with me doing 3 days of, relative to me, heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 days of running. Like, I'll take that.
Yep.
If I can do that every day until they put me 6 feet under, I'll be pretty pleased.
Now, how old are you?
51.
Okay. All right. So when you decided to get into kettlebells, you didn't get any instruction. You just were following along in video. Oh, good for you.
No, I bought them. I literally bought them. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I wonder which one I bought first. I think I bought the 20 kg first.
Ooh, ouch.
gutsy.
And anybody think, oh, 20K, that's 45 pounds. That's not that much. Okay, guys, I know there's only 90 of you watching right now, but 25 pounds, 12K when you have never picked up a kettlebell before.
It just
It's enlightening.
feels different. So it's funny, quick little story. The gym space close by it's a co-op space.
Mhm.
Multiple trainers lease out of there and they can bring their clients in there and
Mhm.
do all that. It's been fantastic. Their ceiling height is incredibly low. The one big deficit there. Now, my ceiling isn't exactly high, but strangely enough, I can still snatch here, although I do see some scuff marks.
Wow, that's low.
It is low, but at the gym, it's even lower still. So
Oh, you're
I cannot
taller than me. You're taller than me.
that is correct.
Yeah.
I cannot stand an overhead press without my fingers touching the ceiling. So a barbell press, or in all likelihood, a kettlebell press, is not going to work.
Mhm.
So when I go to the gym over here, it's a half kneeling dumbbell press. And when I tell you a properly weighted half kneeling dumbbell press, still really fun and all these things. But boy, I'll tell you what, I haven't lifted a dumbbell with meaning in a long time.
Mhm.
Compared to how a kettlebell loads,
Mhm.
it's entirely different.
Yes.
It's entirely different. But and I told Dan too, going back some time, I never partially because of the pandemic and a ton of imposter syndrome, I never signed up for any in-person kettlebell training. So that visit in Jersey City was enlightening in so many capacities.
Because when I started,
Mhm.
because of my injuries that I've had, I watched Enter the Kettlebell. Now, okay,
Mhm.
I watched Enter the Kettlebell, and I watched, as we spoke before we started, but a lot of Mark Wildman stuff.
Sure.
And I looked at it, and I'm like, I'm going to break myself in half. I'm not interested.
Right.
And so I'm going to get if I can get a trainer, I'm going to get a trainer. So I went, even with the pandemic going on, we met by ourselves. So you just had to make sure it was just the two of you in the building at any
Right.
given time. So, and yeah, I was like, I'm only going to end the trainer, walk me through a bunch of stuff. And I did some swings. So I did do like swings and things. And I think my swing form was okay, but he worked me through because I wanted to learn how to do a Turkish get up because
Right. Oh.
it's vaguely complicated, and I didn't think I had the technical ability. Maybe that's not
Mhm.
the technical ability to do it, and so
Mhm.
I didn't want to drop the thing on my face. So I said I want somebody to teach me how to do this, and so that's why I went to. It was good for you for doing it without a instructor because
It was humbling, not just studying on my own, and I felt like I was able to learn because we learn through doing. To anyone listening who has relented against, say, picking up kettlebells, literally and figuratively, I would say give it a go, play with they call it a practice for a reason, but do also seek the help of a professional who knows what the hell they're doing. Because if I see one more, and I have specific images in my mind that I will not get into right now, but if I see one more person teaching kettlebell movements that does not know what the hell they're doing.
you wouldn't imagine how many times. And the nice thing about being an RKC, and the only reason I'm RKC and not Strong First is because of Dan John, because I wanted to go to a Dan John cert.
Yeah.
And so it just happened that it popped up. I was not planning on going when I went.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it was like 7 weeks out, but it ended up being 6 weeks out. And I had 6 weeks to prepare for the snatch test. And that wasn't a lot of fun. But I did it, but it wasn't a lot of fun. Having those letters behind your name.
Yeah.
If I'm in a gym, so I'm in a gym and they have kettlebells.
Mm-hmm.
And people do things with kettlebells that I'm like, the big thing, which you'll probably see is this.
I'll see that. I'll see bell over the wrist on the snatch a lot. I'll see swings that need more explosion, more snap back.
Yeah.
A real focus on the straight arm plank at the top.
Yeah.
And then eventually, once you get that, a little bit more velocity on the pole. Again, just
those are relatively minor things. I see things where people are going to get hurt.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And and this is the thing that I don't think people understand is because it's ballistic in nature and it's kind of off the way the weight is. If you hold it correctly, you'll never have any issues. But it is not a barbell. Mark talks about this a lot.
Yep.
You use a barbell wrist and it's like this.
Right.
And you're going to wreck yourself.
Right.
Eventually. It's not going to bother you with 20 or 25 pounds. It's not. What's going to happen is you're going to go up in weight. Your wrists are going to get messed up. And then you're going to say, oh, kettlebells stink. It's like, no.
And you're not going to be able to train.
Yeah. You'll hurt yourself. I mean, you
Yeah.
just, and
Yeah.
so
And that's not the point of training.
yeah, and every time I have the opportunity, I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll say, hi, hi, excuse me. Yeah, and they're like, what do you want? I'm like, don't mean to bother you, but I'm a kettlebell instructor. I'm a certified kettlebell instructor, and you just want to hold it this way. Oh, yeah, because you're gonna mess your shoulder up if you keep doing it like that. Oh, okay. You just don't. Just it's okay. It's like just don't. And all sorts of people, they just don't know. You know, it's like most people, they look at it and they treat it like it's a dumbbell, and it's not.
It is not.
It is
Yeah,
not.
it is not.
It's a different beast. It's not better. It's just different.
It is, and it has been, kettlebells for me have been the thing that have gotten me. I have no problem saying I lifted weights in high school for sports and all of that, but easily as strong now as I've ever been in my life, easily, and it's not even close. And I'm just scratching the surface. At 51, I'm still making progress on my deadlift. I haven't really. I would like to still work on maybe one day pressing the beast. I feel like I can get there. Pull-ups are coming along. I want more. Like I want to continue to be as strong as I can possibly be. That is really.
Just beware of what Dan calls middle-age pull-up elbow.
Yeah, the funny thing is I don't really
It's
do
a real
pull-ups
thing.
enough. Yeah,
It's a real
middle-aged
thing.
pull-up syndrome. Yeah, I don't really do them enough, thankfully, for that to happen. And when I do, I find that I mess with more of a neutral grip, which is
Yep.
easier on my
Yep.
elbows.
Yep. Me too. Me
Um,
too.
but the funny thing is, I was actually walking around one day and came across a playground that had monkey bars. And just randomly, I walked by, got under the monkey bars, and grabbed neutral grip, just a
Mhm.
normal space, and did one slow, steady pull up and one easy negative, and literally just lost my mind because I had never done a pull up in my life. The funny thing is, and I'm thinking about Dan, and I'm thinking about Mark too. They both preach similar things. The negative on a strict overhead kettlebell press
Mhm.
is probably one of the best things you can do to get your pull up going, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you do it right,
If you do it right.
yeah, it's like I think about my pressing, and when I'm going heavy, I don't tend to do slow negatives.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's kettlebells have been so enlightening for me because it's not, how can I say this? The movements are fundamental. Granted, you go searching online, you go look on YouTube, you go look on Instagram, there's all this juggling type of stuff. I'm not going to poo-poo that, but if you focus on the fundamentals, push, pull, hinge, squat, Dan John would say load and carry,
mhm.
some element of core work there, right? You are going to be stronger than most people if
Mhm.
you do it in a progressive way, if you do it appropriately, if you're safe, if you're, all those things. I think there needs to be more of that. Now, granted, training for hypertrophy and things like that are all very, very valid goals. And I have clients who are doing a good bit of that. But being purely strong, I think is something that just resonates for a lot of people. There's something empowering about lifting something heavier than you thought you could over your head with really
Mhm.
good form.
I would like to be stronger. No, I don't want to be stronger, said no one ever. They will say, I don't want to get big. They'll say that all day long. But if you told them you can get stronger without getting big, one, I think a lot of people wouldn't believe you to begin
Mhm,
with.
mhm.
And two, they're like, "Oh, okay." But I thought that if you like picked up a weight, you'd look like a bodybuilder.
Well, what's the element that often gets yeah, what's the element that often gets overlooked when you're talking about adding muscle mass? Sets and
Time
reps, okay, that.
and
Sets and reps
consistency.
matter so much, but what is the other thing that we're not talking about? In order to add muscle mass, you need to be in a caloric surplus.
Mhm.
You can add a little bit of lean muscle mass if you are, say, at maintenance calories or even below, sort of,
Mhm.
and then you'll sort of level out a little bit.
Right.
But in terms of adding sheer muscle mass, like pounds over pounds over pounds, you've got to be in a surplus. You just
Mhm.
have to be,
Mhm.
or at a minimum, consuming a boatload of protein.
Boatload of
And
protein, maintenance. You could, I think, I don't know this, but for certain, but you at least need to be at maintenance so that your surplus is coming from the
fair, sure,
extra fat that you have. So I think that's reasonable to assume that that's
fair, but you're
possible.
but you're not going to be at peak hypertrophy. Just being able to
No,
literally layer pounds of muscle on you.
no.
So all that to say, as it relates to what we're both mentioning, you have to be very intentional if your goal is to add more than a little bit of muscle mass. So
And
to your point, getting too big is nonsensical. It
right.
does not hold water.
And this is for men.
Mhm.
This is for men. And again, we're going to loop back to what I talked about with Tina. Ladies, you can't do it. The amount of work that y'all have to put in to get big is so much that it defies comprehension. Because it's hard for
Yeah,
a man, it's hard for a man to put on muscle.
yeah,
Being just like eating normally, you eat in a surplus, you have to be working out 3 or 4 days a week,
yeah.
and you got to be
Lots
like
of volume.
lots of
Lots of
yeah, lots
volume.
of volume.
Yeah,
So
lots of volume.
if you're working out half an hour 2 or 3 days a week, you're not going to get big.
Yeah,
You'll get in shape. You will get in shape. You will you can get strong.
yeah.
You will be a better human being. You will not get large.
Yeah, yeah, and listen, I'm a big believer in being, not to steal one from Pat Flynn, but I do like the idea of more the generalist thing. I like the idea of pairing strength training with something else. It could be, getting walks in. It could be
Yeah.
adding some resistance to it and going for rucks.
Mhm.
I still enjoy running after all these years, and until my body says I can't do it anymore, I'm going to continue to do it. I don't think I'll go back to running marathons or anything like that, but
Mhm.
I still enjoy it. And it challenges me, and it lands for me in a way that very few things do. But we could all stand to be a little bit stronger.
Yes. I mean, who doesn't want to be able to just pick up their carry-on and put it overhead
Pick up the carry on, put it overhead.
and not drop it on the old lady sitting next to you when you pull it out of the overhead bin?
I think
I
of
think that's probably the bigger thing, is not dropping it on anyone else. It's one thing
I,
putting it up.
yeah,
That's the big thing. It's just think about this, people. You want to be able to just take care of your own stuff, be it heavy, be it not, and not inconvenience anybody else whenever they're in your relative
well,
area.
and how many people do we all know that have, say, like low back issues
Hmm.
or low back pain, or have gone all sorts of, medical intervention routes to try to get things relieved? And I'm certainly not poo-pooing medical intervention to the extent it's necessary. You
Hmm.
have to do it.
Right.
But I think one of the bigger contributors to that is the fact that we, overly generalizing, but we sit far more. Our
Hmm.
glutes are as turned off can be. Sleepy butt syndrome is a real thing. And so whether it's through a traditional kettlebell deadlift, right? Or something ballistic like a swing or a snatch or a clean, a trap bar deadlift in the gym, straight bar if appropriate, learning how to hinge properly and turn on those big, beautiful glutes that we all have,
Hmm.
I, I think is one of the things that, to me, it's a great joy when
Hmm.
I can get a client to hinge properly and it lands. It's a thing of beauty, because then they find over time, without getting excessive as far as the loading goes, but over time they find that some of that discomfort that they had in their low back suddenly starts to whittle away, because these bigger movers that we have back there are starting to do their jobs and take over. The hand gestures are probably not entirely appropriate. I hope this isn't a children's show.
It is not made for children.
Not made for children. But you have these big, gorgeous movers behind us that are doing the moving that they're supposed to be doing, instead of, say, all the stabilizing muscles in the low back taking the brunt of that, right? It's simple, fundamental things that we can take with us as we get older.
And another fascinating thing that I found, like one of the best core exercises you possibly can do, is single arm squat.
Yeah. Like a rack squat.
A rack squat, single arm, not a goblet. Goblet squat is easier,
Hmm.
but a single arm squat will challenge your core more than you will imagine.
I'm going to agree with you, but I want to put a pin in that for a second, because I will
Yep.
say, training a number of athletes like I do, if I have one more athlete come in and say, "Oh, I need the barbell back squat, I need the barbell back squat," you take a look at their form and everything is all out of whack.
Hmm.
You have them go kettlebell goblet squat
Yep.
and they feel their core engage,
Yep.
and they get their elbows down towards the
Hmm.
insides of their knees, and they
Hmm.
feel what a squat is supposed to, a
Yep.
properly weighted
Yep.
kettlebell squat,
Yep. Yep.
progressively even, I
Yep.
would say carries more value than some of this nonsensical heavy barbell back squat stuff. But I will tell you, I'm with you on the front rack squat, single
Hmm.
or double,
Yep.
wherever you are. Right next to me, A and B, as far as core work versus single arm suitcase carry. I mean, you will feel
Yep.
your core fire up.
Hmm. Yep.
without
And
question.
yep.
Without question.
And that's the thing. I think with kettlebells, unlike a lot of other things, it's like I lifted with barbells and I lifted with dumbbells prior to using kettlebells. And you can get away with not engaging your core. Yes,
Right.
you will lift more weight if you properly engage your core. I am not going to say that that does not happen. If you don't engage your core when you use kettlebells, you will die.
You might.
It's simply, when I say die, I don't mean literally, folks.
Yeah, you might.
I just mean that it's, anybody that's teaching you kettlebells are, it's a hinge plank, like the way that
Right.
Dan hinge plank. So at the top, it is a plank. So
Right.
pull your kneecaps up, whoomp, everything tight. Particularly
E-
if you're using one arm.
Right. Even on the grinds, I would say.
Oh yes.
Say if you're progressing on your overhead press,
Yep.
having that good strong brace
Mm-hmm.
here. I think the term is irradiation, where your body is engaged, your kneecaps are pulled up, your core is
Yep.
braced, your opposite hand, right, strong,
Mm-hmm.
opposite arm. That affords you the ability to sort of wedge yourself under that weight. I find that to be incredibly useful.
And it's interesting, and it's different on either side. So different sides, both sides, your core fires differently for me
Mhm,
anyway. So
mhm.
my left side, I can feel it a lot more. It's like before, particularly as the weight goes up, if the weight is not particularly heavy, so at 12K, 16, 20, I'm not doing this. But at 26, you do the clean comes up, and then you
Mhm.
go whump press. And as the weight goes up, you're feeling your core like holding it.
Right.
It's holding it as you go up, and then it comes down.
Yeah.
And literally the difference between being able to do a heavy Turkish get up and not is whether you turn your core on.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And aside from, like we talked about, sleepy glutes, right? I would say core activation would probably be right behind it in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest fitness epidemics that we're more concerned about curls and benching and stupid human tricks on social media versus being functionally strong. Glutes,
And
core. I mean, come on.
I'm gonna back squat a ton of weight, so I'm gonna put on this belt.
Yeah. Now,
And so
listen, if you're going for some sort of like world record or something
yes.
like that, sure. But I would submit for your consideration that I would say a lot of, I'm generalizing on purpose here, but a lot of
Mhm.
people who
Yes,
use belts probably don't necessarily
need to.
know where they're supposed to go, what they're specifically used for. But learning how to brace yourself is
Yeah.
critical.
Right. Yeah. So you could literally, most people, because I know I used to, you're using a belt to compensate for the fact that you don't know how to brace your core.
Right.
However, if you're squatting 500 or 600 pounds, use your belt. Don't be
Go
stupid.
for it. Yeah.
Don't
Go
be
for it.
stupid.
Yeah.
I'm talking about I'm back squatting 135 pounds and I need to put on a belt. No, you don't.
Yeah, and there are some movements, I feel there are some movements, not all movements work for every
Mhm.
body, physically
Mhm.
everyone's body. Set aside, teaching the difference between a hinge and a squat and all of that, and that's coaching and cueing and all of this. But some people just have, like, say, squatting for me, I got under a bar and demoed a back squat one day last week, and I got down to what I felt was the bottom.
Mhm.
And I'm like, this just isn't, that's not good. It's just not good. And so barbell back squats for me are just a non thing.
Yeah, I don't like them either. I have to raise my heels up so much that
Sure.
they're just, whereas a front squat feels great. I mean, other
Uh,
than other than the holding the bar in a weird place, but
Jimmy, I'll tell you, aside from everything, my favorite part of the RKC weekend
mhm,
was testing the double front squats. Because
mhm,
I'll tell you what, I could do sets of 5 on those
mhm.
at double 24s until the cows came home.
Really good
Like
for you.
there's something that is so connected about a double kettlebell front squat. Like,
Mhm.
you have to be very present
Yes.
in the Buddhist vernacular. You have to be very, very present. If you are not right there, and it all starts with the hike back, the
Mhm,
catch, foot placement, bracing, like all the things, you lose focus for one hot second.
mhm,
But I'll tell you what, you start moving those things,
mhm.
it's something special for
Yeah,
sure.
it's enlightening. Yeah, double 24s is not a lot of fun for me.
They are
For
not.
me. For me.
Yeah, they're not.
Thankfully, I only have one 24. Okay, I have two adjustable kettlebells. You say, well, so you have 24s. Yes, but they're set to something specific, and I don't like messing with it.
Upstairs, I have one of the Kettlebell Kings adjustable bells. I have it set to 32. I messed around with it and did singles.
Mhm,
It's good. It's fine for what it is.
mhm.
I respect
Yeah,
Dan's opinion. No problem. I have competition bells here. I got to tell you, I just don't like the way they feel. They're fine for what they are.
yeah,
But if I had my choice, man, the hard style bells just work
yeah.
for my body, pretty well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I like my 20s. I like 24s. I like the hearts, the RKC 24s. I do like those.
Yep.
But to Mark Wildman's point, as far as a cost benefit ratio, there is nothing to compare to a Kettlebell Kings.
You can't beat it.
No, 350
You can't beat it.
bucks, you have like $1,500 worth of weights.
I have one, I forget where I got it from. Might have been Bells of Steel that I kept in my trunk and I would take it for in-home sessions. Allen wrench and a turn, boom, you're set
Yep.
to whatever the hell it is you need. I think it's an enormously effective tool.
Yes.
It is a tool.
Yes.
Listen, it's not to be dogmatic. Part of the confusing part for folks in the fitness industry is that fine line between this is what works for me, n equals one. This is what has been working for me. Engage me if you would like me to help you, and we will work on your specific prescription for
Mhm.
what lands. It could be body weight specific, almost purely calisthenic work. That all goes through the assessment process. But
Okay,
I
Dan. Okay, we're
yeah,
gonna we're gonna do that. Hopefully, this can be a nice, good sound bite for a short.
go
All
for it.
right, Dan. Once you put the glass down, it's okay. All right, Dan. So, what is? Because I'm hoping you know the answer to this question. You better know it because I know what the answer is. But I was like, I want you to say it so we can clip it. So, Dan, what's the best workout for everybody?
The one you're going to do consistently.
Right, the one that you like.
Yeah.
That's why I tend to gravitate towards kettlebell. It's because I enjoy it. Take it outside, you throw it around for a while, and you're done.
as
It's
as a
simple.
trainer and someone whose livelihood is based on the fact that I need people to show up and do what I ask them to do. I'm a big believer in movement is not punishment,
Mhm.
nor should it feel that way. You're not locked in a prison. So I do understand that some of what we do is moving entertainment and we have to keep them engaged and hey, how are the kids and this and all these other things. But the reality is I want clients to be able to stack wins, to be able to tangibly realize that they are moving the same weight more times or moving a heavier weight for the first time, and to be able to wake up the next day and go to work pain free. I want you to realize that what you are doing makes you even just incrementally better the next day. It's one of the first things I say to prospective clients. If you wake up the next day soul crushingly sore, I failed you. All right. Because movement to me, movement is more about honoring your physical self and what you have within you than it is about beating yourself down or
Punishing
punishing
yourself.
yourself for the meal that you had yesterday or any of these other self-deprecating internal monologues we can have. Lifting something, no matter how small, how large, does not matter, is arguably the most authentic way we can honor ourselves.
And that point right there is why easy strength is so hard. People feel they need to punish themselves. This isn't hard enough.
Yeah, I'm sitting here and
And
off to
that's
my left,
and I think that's us too. It's like that
probably.
we all have a picture. It should be harder than this.
Jimmy, I'll be honest with you. I'm still, and I've got before pictures maybe posted on Instagram. I've got them saved somewhere of what I used to look like. And every time I show up on my 10 by 15 mat, or if I go to the gym, I'm still in some capacities fighting against that guy,
Mhm.
that guy that I was and probably always will be. But it is about showing up and doing the thing. I think an approach that doesn't crush you is a great way to honor yourself and establishes your ability to be consistent
You'll actually
because
get more done.
yeah, I mean, listen, I struggled for a long time
Yeah.
with the whole 15 or 20 minutes, especially when I'm down here in the basement doing kettlebell easy strength, right?
Mhm.
2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3. I'm like, that can't be. I'll literally add something in just to draw it out a little bit.
Mhm.
But it resonates and
Mhm.
it's just enough. Minimal effective dose. You know you're making progress.
And what we're saying that we're both saying is that as far as strength goes, the way easy strength works, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you want to, as Dan John states, if you want to increase your engine, no, easy strength isn't going to do it. You're correct. It isn't hard enough. If you're working on getting your heart to work better.
Right.
That you can, run across the street and you don't get winded.
Right.
It does not do that. It will get you stronger. So there are different types of training for different goals.
Well, training with specificity is
Yeah.
so freaking important. Track back to what your goals are and then extrapolate out from there. I will tell you, generally speaking, easy strength does not do that. Heavy overhead presses, because I wear a heart rate strap every time I train, no matter what I'm doing. I don't know why. I like the feedback from it. Right? Heavy
Except
overhead presses?
this doesn't like kettlebells at all.
I would imagine not.
Because the kettlebell crushes it into your finger. And I'm like, yep, nope, got to take that off.
Heavy overhead presses for me still get my heart rate up a little bit, depending on, where I am in terms of sets or reps. But I would say that adding swings in 50, 75, 100 swings, however you want to break them up, is a great way to get the heart rate up. Dan talks about it a lot. And then go for a walk.
Yeah.
Which I'll tell you what, the greatest benefit of doing something really, really, really freaking hard, putting your shoes on and going outside, aside from bringing your heart rate down, sort of tied together, it also calms your central nervous system down. So when you're done, you don't have that I'm still buzzing type of feeling.
Yeah. You're releasing the tension.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely.
Because that's kind of what the hard style kettlebells is all about. It's ratcheting up as much tension as you can. So.
Right. So you had said that you had mentioned before about easy strength and not necessarily building the engine. I agree with you 100%. To the extent you wanted to mix in some of that. The
swings could. If you did them fast enough. If you're doing sets of 15 every minute on the minute, then probably it would.
I've actually partially because again, still being gentle with the back, I actually was messing with shorter sets every 30 seconds. So the rest was short.
Yep.
But you can still be super, super, super powerful. And in 30 seconds, there is no place to hide.
Yep.
Again, regardless of so long as it's scaled appropriately.
Yes.
Kettlebell ballistics done properly are a great way to kind of nudge that needle a little bit. It's interesting talking about how when I first got started, all I was doing was running. I think sometimes we find comfort in the familiar and going medium to medium hard all the time without necessarily knowing when to scale back and go easy and then when to really throttle. I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Magnus, track coach. He has a very famous tweet. I have his book too. I finished it not too long ago. He has this tweet that I think is so brilliant. It's sort of haiku, but it's not. And I'm going to kill it. Steve, I know you're going to listen to this. I'll send it to him. He says, train often, mostly easy, sometimes hard, rarely go see God. And I'm like, that's it.
Yes.
I'm like, that's it. Listen, that's the 80-20 rule of life. Do most of your stuff on the easier side. 20%, go knock yourself out. I feel like that can be a missing ingredient. Either we've got it reversed, we've got 80% too hard, 20% easy. We don't understand why we're hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Or we're just kind of stuck in some other pattern in there. I think that's the other thing too that gets lost in the fitness space is that there's one recipe for all people. There's so much dogma in all this, whether it's nutrition or movements or whatever it is. What works for me may not work for you in any capacity. Now, I may be able to take things from you that you've done and apply them to me. If it works, I'll keep it. And if it doesn't, I'll stop doing it. But what I think we have to understand, and I actually had a client ask me this a few years ago, why should I work with you instead of just pulling some random program or series of workouts off the internet? And the answer is really simple, because what we do is tailored to you and your goals and where you are in that moment. Whereas most of this other stuff out there is just broad, sweeping generalizations. Here, do this. You already bought my program, so whether it works or not is kind of, I've bought programs from other people. Offline, we can talk about who. But I will tell you, just to kind of see how the other half lives and what else is out there. And I take a look at these programs and I'm like, there's no way you can give this to someone who's even a novice and expect a reasonable degree of just to be able to perform the movements. So I look at that, and if you are an end consumer, you want to get in shape, you want to get stronger, you buy a program like that, you take a look at it, and you're like, shit, I can't do any of these things, or I do them and I screw myself up. well, I guess it was never meant for me. That's it.
Hmm.
This is just the way it is.
Right.
And that's just not it. That's just
No.
not it.
Well, the other thing, I mean, what's the difference between you have somebody who really knows the movements and they know, they can watch you. And the problem with you trying to follow along with a video is you can't see yourself. And
Right.
even if you video yourself, you don't know what to look for to know whether you're doing it right or not.
Right.
I've had people watch me, it's like, well, do I am I going to failure? Because there's so much online. Now, this is with weight training, this is with dumbbells and stuff like that. And so I've sent videos to people, and it's, because you hear so much online that people don't work hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a bodybuilder, and he looked at it, he's like, no, you're going to failure. Don't worry. You had nothing. You had nothing left. And so, but that's nice to have that affirmation. But it's
Right.
also nice that I'm working with a kettlebell guy, to have an SFG guy, a strong first guy came to my house, helped me work on the snatch.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, can you snatch 24K? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, let me see. Let me watch your snatch. Let me watch your snatch.
Mm-hmm.
And he watches it and he says, all right. He says, okay, so what you're doing is you're breathing in the wrong place. And I'm like, okay. He says, you're breathing as the weight passes your chest, you are letting out the breath as it goes up. So you're going, shh. So you release the breath at the top.
Mm-hmm. In that really compressed kind of way.
Yes. So,
yeah.
And he said, what you want to do is brace when the weight is straight ahead and let the weight float up. Then grab the 24. And I did it and went right up. I mean, like literally first rep, did it that way. Boom.
Yep.
That is the difference of us having somebody watch you and have them there. But the goal of every good trainer, and this is what I would say if I was training anybody, my goal is to get it so you don't need me anymore.
Yes.
And do it safely. But that doesn't mean that you may be like, you know what? I like it so much. I want to keep working with you. That may be the case too. But my goal is so that you can do this yourself safely. That's my goal.
Yeah. I mean, how empowering is that?
Yeah. I mean, I can go do anything I want. If I want to wreck myself, I can wreck myself. If I want to take it easy, I can take it easy. And I'm not, as we spoke offline, I have made it because I've had 2 haters.
It's early, Jimmy. You'll get more. You'll get more.
I am sure. I've had baristas, and when he criticized my form, I said, well, let me look at that. He may be right. Maybe I didn't see it when I just wanted to get the video out there, so I banged the video out. Maybe I didn't check the form. I should have chewed. And I watched the form. I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's pretty solid. That's pretty solid. I don't know if I'm going to listen to a barista, but
I'd have to go back and check Instagram. I know trainers who post their own lifts frequently. It's not, we're probably talking some imposter syndrome type stuff here. Mm-hmm. I'd probably just pass on that. Nobody, but by the way, and I'll be clear, nobody gives a damn about what I lift. Nobody gives a damn about how simplistic or minimal my training is, because really in the end, it's why am I watching this guy do insert movement here, and how does that relate to what he can do for me? And I don't know that translates.
This was a video I just put up. It's like,
listen, I love it. And I wish there's a part of me that wishes, full vulnerability moment here, wishes that I had maybe a touch more confidence in that to be able to do that. Certain things, sure. Other things, maybe not so much.
Again, it's like, and I think one of the points I wanted to make with that video was, I was doing that workout 3 months after learning kettlebells.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's madness.
Yeah.
Knowing what I know now, I didn't know anything. I was like, well, if you say I can do it, I guess I'll do it. Madness. Absolute madness. And my point was, I did this when I was brandy new. And now I'm using the same weight. I mean, I'm using the same weight for those because that is soul crushing for your engine. But if I had just been, the interesting thing about kettlebells is, had I only been doing that workout for the last 2 years, but gradually increased the weight. So every time you go through everything, you just dial it back, and like instead of 16, you're doing 18, and instead of when you get done with 18, you go to 20. Had I done that, I would be a monster because I'd probably be doing double 28s, double 32s by now. Maybe not double 32s, probably double 24s. I'd probably be doing double 24s. And I would be that's the cool thing about the thing I like about kettlebells, and I should be letting you talk and not me. But
Please.
the thing I really like about kettlebells is that you can go out, and people don't believe this, is I don't like to run. Well, they may believe that, but I don't like to run. I don't like cardio. I don't like any of that, but I don't mind going and crushing myself with kettlebells for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you want to know something? You want to know something soul crushing? And you know this because you've done it. Soul crushing. Grab 220s and do the Dan Jarnes armor building complex for 30 minutes. Every minute on the minute. I just did that last week. Do that for 30 minutes. I only did 25 rounds in 30 minutes.
Probably one of my favorites.
It's so easy.
Thing. Yeah, that
and,
thing.
And then what Dan says, and you won't think about it until I say what I'm going to say at the end. But Dan John's armor building complex, and Mark Wildman has said absolutely brilliant, is do 2 double cleans with kettlebells, 2 double cleans, 1 double press, 3 double squats, double front squats. So it's like, well, that's not that much. Listen to what I said. You do that for 30 minutes, which means you've done 90 squats. Yes, I'm only using
90 squats at 88 pounds. I mean,
yeah.
It adds up quick.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny. I mentioned before I wear the heart rate strap when I do that. So when I go back and look at it, like you see this tangible, like we're getting there, and there we are.
And the heart rate doesn't really come down. It does, sort of.
Yeah, the recovery time is interesting. Strangely enough, my last workout before the RKC, don't do this, kids. My last workout at home before I went to the RKC was the armor building complex with double 24s. Every minute on the minute for 15 minutes. And when I tell you, after about 2, I'm like, why am I doing this? This is dumb. I woke up the next day feeling horrendous. Yeah. Perfect example. Kids,
so it's just,
don't do what I did.
What is it? Hans and Franz would say, hear me now and believe me later. When I tell you, you should not be doing the armor building complex with double 24s before the RKC.
But done appropriately, I would submit that it's, and this was actually a conversation on Dan John University some time ago. If you could only do 3 movements forever, simple, double clean, double press, double front squat, I'd probably be okay. It covers a lot of bases. But I think what kettlebells have taught me over the years more than anything else is that sometimes more is just more, that anyone can be strong in their body when they are connected in the mind and what they're doing physically. Kettlebells have this insane ability to empower people in a way that I think is a little bit different than any other implement. Now, again, this is not to be dogmatic. I use kettlebells with my clients from time to time, but not all the time, because again, most folks will like that variety of different implements. But I think there's a lot of utility in finding the stimulus that resonates for each person mentally and each person's body physically, and finding those movement patterns. Push, pull, hinge, squat, we'll say loaded carry. I love giving people single arm suitcase carries. You give somebody an appropriately weighted single arm suitcase carry, and then you have them take their offhand and put it into the opposite side of their core, and they feel their core fire. It's like they saw Santa Claus for the first time. It's literally like another moment. And that, to me, it's one of the reasons why I love to do what I do, when people get it and they realize how capable they are.
And I think, something as simple as an around the world,
which
I do believe helped me with my I mean, my feet are still flat, but as Mark Wildman talks about, how it can help cure flat feet if you're doing it with the proper footwear or no shoes, and particularly as it gets heavy. But I think what that trains people to do is teaches you how to catch things without looking at it.
Yeah.
Which is not a skill most people have. It's not a skill anybody would work on. And so you need to learn how to catch something without looking at it. which is I think I have a video on the around the world on the channel somewhere. And what difference does that make? You'd be amazed. I think there's been times we drop something randomly and I've been able to catch it without looking at it. And I believe that's because of kettlebells.
I think there's utility in that. Pavel in Enter the Kettlebell did the hand-to-hand swing, and I don't know if it was purposeful or not, but dropped it. I think there's, number one, there's utility in dropping it. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
All life contains some suffering, right? Pick it up, start over again.
Yeah.
But training that very, very specific skill, especially as we age, not just hand-eye coordination, but that sort of anticipatory extra sense sort of thing.
It's like a lot of the, the club training and the staff training that Mark Wildman talks about. It's just, that's seriously cool stuff.
I think the most important thing is again, finding the movement patterns or the implements that resonate for you.
Yeah. Nothing is better than kettlebells do most things well, but they're not going to build absolute strength the best way because they're not that heavy. But you pick up a 48K kettlebell and squat with it. I've never done that.
You will realize where your core is.
Oh yeah. Oh, you pick up a 32K. Oh, I'll know.
Yeah.
It's like, I've done things. It's like, I can clean a 32K, And when I was at the RKC with you, I did press a 32K. I don't know how I did that. But I did. Again, that was, I don't know if you, see, most people didn't even see it. And that's the frustration. Nobody saw it.
Video or it never happened.
No, I mean, the only person that saw it was the person. I was trying to help this woman out, and she was having trouble with the ABC. So with the ABC, you're supposed to go at an RKC, at the RKC, you go, I go, you go, I go. And so you hope that the person that you're with isn't as strong as you, so they take longer than you do. That's what you hope. That doesn't necessarily happen. And so she was dying. So I stepped in to help and slow things down so that she could cope.
Right.
And, I'm supposed to, as an instructor, I'm supposed to be there kind of just watching, making sure everybody's okay. And so as she was having some issues and I'm trying to help her with her clean. And I said, look, let me show you a clean done badly. And I picked up the 32 and I cleaned it. And she looked at me. It's like, that wasn't that bad. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It wasn't that bad. And I cleaned it again. And I was like, and you'll understand this when you do kettlebells for any length of time, when you clean it, because you clean and press, it's a clean and press. The clean sets up the press. So if you do the clean right, it will sit in the shoulder girdle the proper way. And my shoulder said, go ahead, give it a go. You got it. My shoulder said, you got it. Boom, it went up. And I'm like, holy crap. I mean, I think a couple of people watched it, but nobody was videotaping me. And I'm like, Anyway, I digress.
There's something really gratifying about stumbling into something that first time.
But I can't do it at home. I don't know whether that's 32 kg is heavier than one. Maybe
do not put it on your kitchen scale. I would not suggest that.
I'm 150 feet above sea level, unlike below sea level I'm kidding. At Jersey City, it seems like that.
Yeah.
But I think it was the amount of warm up. There's so much warm up. So you're very warm. You're very warm. You've done a lot of things at an RKC, so you're kind of primed.
My body had never buzzed like that, literally for 48 hours. And so I mentioned to Josh, who was one of our gracious hosts there at Iron Performance. I'm going to look it up because I need to give him credit for hosting us. I said, Josh, I would love to get a press PR. And this was on Sunday. And we talked about it. And by the time Sunday afternoon rolled around, I knew the ABC was coming up. And I'm like, there's no way. I don't even know if I could lift my arms over my head. And my partner for the ABC, he was great, Tom. He was great. Guy from Manchester, England. He was pacing pretty aggressively at first. And then I'm like, okay, he can't keep going like this. And then we both started to slow a little bit. But it was as fun and humbling and empowering. And if I ever hear the song Closing Time one more time, Ironbound Performance, by the way.
Ironbound Performance.
Josh Tevis at Ironbound Performance in Jersey City. Man, I'll tell you what, they
and his wife, great folks.
and his wife Haley, phenomenal. They just absolutely are outstanding human beings and created a great environment for us. But I kept saying, "Oh yeah, I would love to get a press PR." Would love, never quite materialized.
What is your press PR?
I've got the 32. If I tried to pick it up now, I think I could, with good form. I think I could get 2 or 3.
Oh wow.
I feel pretty good about that. I would like to get a hard style 32, start to work with it a little bit before eventually getting double 32s. To do what, I do not know. I probably need to have a little bit longer relationship with my double 24s for a while. Again, it's all semantics. It could be a pair of soup cans. It's just all about, here's the implement, here's the stimulus. I just want to keep working on it and getting better with it.
Just so we can dial it back a little bit. So for some of the people will be like, oh my God. Bear in mind, I started with 12 and 16.
Yeah.
16K. I started with 12 and 16K. I can regularly do sets of 5, sets of 6 with 24. I can do sets of 4 with 26, probably 3 with 28. That's after a couple of years, but I probably could be stronger than that if I had done different things, but I didn't. So here I am. Where did you start? What I'm looking for is, don't think you're just going to jump into kettlebells, grab a 32 and pick it up.
Or any weight for that matter. It could be kettlebells, it could be dumbbells, it could be,
unless you're Dan John.
It could be slapping weights on a barbell.
Yeah.
I want to say, looking at this, I feel like the first bells I ordered were a 16 and a 20. And I want to say I started with the 20. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's close to where I was. And I remember when I got started, I picked up a book. This was before I stumbled into like the Mark Wildman thing and ultimately Dan's work. Steve Cotter published a book on kettlebells that I picked up. It was fun to the extent you can really learn form through a book, but the workouts in there were like just brutal. Lots of complex work and stringing stuff together. So that was probably the first formalized kettlebell workout approach that I took, and then sort of came down off that a little bit. Thankfully have wised up a little bit, but
yeah, anybody that says yes, Gregory, I'm talking to you. Anybody that says the kettlebell snatch test is too hard. I have looked at the IKFF, the things you have to pass to get IKFF make the snatch test look like nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And I'm not going to say that the snatch test isn't hard. It is. And it's very enlightening. And I don't know whether I didn't share this story with anyone there. So when I did the snatch, because the snatch test is everybody's bugaboo. Well, most people. I'm going to say most normal humans, when they look at the RKC cert, the thing that they're going to be afraid of is the snatch test.
Yeah.
Because as Dan says, we can coach you through anything. We can coach you to pass everything other than the snatch test. And once you start, it's you and the bell.
And the clock.
And you either have the engine to do it or you don't in that moment. And so me leading into the snatch test, I thought I had 7 weeks. I actually had 6 weeks because I had mistaken what weekend it was. So I had one fewer week to prepare. And I went and I looked at Dan's RKC prep and I didn't quite understand it. And I told Dan after the cert, I said, Dan, I really think you wrote that for a 30-year-old. I'm 51, and that's not written for a 50-year-old. That's written for a 35-year-old. And I ripped myself in half.
Yeah.
I wrecked my shoulder, could not for at least a week. I couldn't snatch at all. Maybe it could have been 2. So 2 weeks of the 6 weeks I had leading into the snatch test, I couldn't snatch at all. My shoulder was all screwed up. So I did something else. I said, okay, the problem is not the snatch. The problem is my engine. My engine is the problem. So I've got to do something to train the engine. So I did something which was double kettlebell deadlifts. So I did the snatch weight, but with double kettlebells. I figure if I can do double kettlebell, double 20K, double kettlebell deadlifts, I'm probably training my engine. If I can do 100 in 5 minutes, it's probably the same amount of force as doing the snatch. Nominally. Sure. Not exactly, because it's actually easier. It's way easier. I'm telling you right now, folks, double 24s probably would be relatively equivalent to the 20K snatch. And as I was walking around Hoboken, because I had at home passed the snatch test. In 5 minutes, I'd done the 100 snatches. So as I'm walking around and because I wake up early because of my schedule, I'm walking around and I'm thinking, it's like, why am I nervous? I was like really nervous leading into the snatch test. And it dawned on me, I was like, I am not nervous to pass because it's like, I know I can do it. So what is the problem? The problem was I am not nervous to pass. No, I am not nervous to fail. I'm not nervous to fail. I'm
Right.
nervous to pass.
Right.
And one would say, why are you nervous to pass? Because I have not been really fit in my life. So I identify as an old, overweight, fat guy who's out of shape. Problem is, if you pass the snatch test, you are not that person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a piece of paper that says you did something that most humans on this earth can't do.
Right. Right. Right.
So you are demonstrably not an overweight fat guy. That's what the snatch test gives you. It's that doing something hard and proving to yourself that you're able to do it.
I would submit for your consideration, and I use this sort of thought process with clients who are training for, say, like running races and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
where the hard work, where you earn it, is in the 12 or 16 or 18 weeks that you put your work in leading up to it. And then you show up on the morning of the race, the snatch test, and that's your victory lap. If you're able to put the work in for that time, 6 weeks even, I would offer for you to consider you were probably not that middle-aged, overweight dude. Even at that point, you didn't need that slip of paper to tell you that. But sometimes we do.
Well, okay. What I would counter that is you still need to show up on game day and do it.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Yes, you cannot. And I think the argument says, why, you're coming in and you're making somebody do that. He's like, no, do not come to an RKC unprepared. Do not do that.
If you don't plan to test, by the way, just
Yeah.
everything aside from the snatch test.
Yes.
Jimmy, like,
Yes. Right. Particularly if you can go learn from Dan
you're gonna
John.
go through it. Like, you
Yes.
will go through it.
You will go through it. It says, but if you're wanted to be certified, then yeah, basically certification is past the snatch test.
That's right.
But I would say that in that moment, what Dan told me was we were done, and Dan was the one counting for me. Here I am in front of Dan John. Dan John's it's like, oh, fantastic. Just great. And he wasn't counting out loud. He wasn't telling me where I was. I couldn't hear anything. And I did a no count. So I failed on the left side. I think it's like I got to wherever I was. And he's like, just put it down. You got time. And I'm like, where am I? 93. And I'm thinking, all right. So now instead of the careful planning, now the decision comes. I don't know whether I have it on my left side. I have it on my right side. I don't care about being pretty. I just care about doing it.
Yep.
I'm going to rip it out on my right. Just, and I just cranked it out. I think I finished with 4 minutes 30, 4 minutes 35, 4 minutes 35, something like that. Then I'm sitting there, I'm sucking wind. He's like, Jim, would you stand up and demonstrate your snatch technique again? Because he says your effort was heroic because you were doing a dead drop snatch and squatting it up. You were squatting and ripping it up instead of kicking it behind you and hinging it up.
Right.
I know why. It's not a big deal. It was in that moment that it's like, now you really can't, because even though you may not have been as prepared, you may not have been as prepared as you could have been, but mentally you had it mentally to do it. And so I think that's where that comes in.
And there's really something romantically beautiful about the snatch test and things like it for where that kind of challenge sends people. Not just the preparation to go into it, but in that moment and in that time, you see people so connected with themselves. That to me, aside from everything that I learned and everyone I was able to interact with and talk with and share energy with, watching people suffer in such a beautifully orchestrated way, and everyone passed for our RKC. It was really something special. It was something I'll never forget. And I didn't even take the test. But to me, that is what movement is all about.
Yeah.
It's finding that thing that resonates for you and working towards being a little bit better every day, challenging yourself when appropriate, and just continuing to work on finding that most authentic version of yourself.
It's okay to work hard, but generally speaking, don't, because it's not like pro football players don't play like it's game day when it's practice.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I'll go back to that Steve Magnus tweet. I'm pretty sure he's got it pinned out there or something. It's easy
Yeah.
to find, but it's just, I remember reading that one day. I'm like, God, that just resonates
Yep.
so much.
And that's what it is, because you can train for it with the snatch test in particular. And anybody that's ever, even with 16K, I mean, understand that if you do 100 snatches in 5 minutes, even with a sub maximal weight. So,
Mhm.
so I at 54, over 50, you can do 20K.
Yep.
Unless you're really heavy. And then if you're below 50, you have to do 24K. So even if I'm doing 16K, you're going to get gassed. And the thing is, once you've prepared for this, you go into the test and it's a level of awful that is difficult to describe.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and good on anybody that does the Secret Service test, because that's 10 minutes of awful, because 5 minutes of it is awful. And then you realize, I have 5 more minutes of this.
I have raced 5Ks. I have done sprints. I have done what I would consider hard things, but either the RKC snatch test or the Secret Service snatch test for sure is just something else. And to try to explain it to someone who's never picked up a kettlebell, because of course I was explaining to everybody, whether they wanted to know or not, after the fact. It's one of those things where if you've never attempted one, it's hard to put it together. Once you try to attempt one, you're like, how many? In how long? At what weight? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really something, this kettlebell community of ours, that we have this so supportive. God, so supportive. Communicated offline with a bunch of folks who were at the RKC in January, and all been incredibly uplifting and really positive. And they're all funny. Not even all of them are in the fitness profession. It was really a phenomenal experience as someone who, I mean, it fulfills a continuing education requirement for me. So yay me.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It covers me for 2 more years.
Oh, excellent.
But honestly, it was money well spent just to experience all of that. All of that. Phenomenal. Something I'll never forget and would probably want to do again in some capacity or another.
Yeah, it's I will say is certainly a different experience between being a participant and being a coach.
Oh, sure.
And I've made it when Dan John says, "You know what? I like calling you the Hammer. You're going to be the Hammer. Any cert you're ever with me again, you're going to be the Hammer, because I like just telling people, go see the Hammer.
Every time he saw you.
Go see the Hammer."
So good. It's so good.
I've made it. I have haters, and Dan John calls me the Hammer.
That's all right.
It's like it's only 2 haters, so it's all right. And I blocked one of them, and then like the other one is like, should I answer him or not?
It's early, Jimmy. You got plenty of time. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming on, Dan. It's been a great conversation. And this is Jimmy the Hammer saying, always be the Hammer. Jimmy the Hammer, out.